Megavision. I'm Christopher Curtis, and this is a show about people and words and things and blocks, but mostly people and kind of words and ideas in my head. My guest today, if I were in a street fight against all of the Hells Angels in Montreal, and I had to pick one person in my corner, it would be Chuck Norris. If I could pick two people in my corner, Nakuset would be one of those people. Nakuset is the executive director of the Montreal Native Women's Shelter, the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal. You were named 2016 Woman of the Year by the Montreal Women's Council. 2014.
Yeah,
well,
it's been a while.
I'm sure you've done a lot since then. If you're an Indigenous person in Montreal, if you're anyone in Montreal and you need an ally, I feel like you're the person to go to. The first thing I wanted to talk about, if you'll excuse me, we talk often when we talk to and about Indigenous people, a word that comes up is colonialism. And the way we were taught this in school, it's something that happened all of these years ago. But I think your own experience would speak to the fact that it's ongoing. And you were part of something called the 60s Scoop. Your two sisters, your four brothers were all taken away from your parents. You're from Saskatchewan. You're from L'Orange, Saskatchewan. You were taken away and placed in foster care against the will of your parents. Your sister said something about this in an interview with CBC, and I thought it was just horrifying, and I just wanted to share this with you, and then we can talk. I'm sorry. She said, your sister Sonia said, one night there was a knock at the door. Nakuset and I were alone in the house. I kind of opened the door, and some police came in and took us away. You were 3 years old. What happened?
I actually have no recollection of that. I think that what had happened between basically me being born and being actually taken away, there's no memories. And a lot of traumatic things happened. But I feel for my sister that she witnessed everything.
Yeah.
She holds all the memories. And it's really, really difficult for her. But it made her who she is today. She found me. She found Rosemary. Because I have no memories, I would have never thought to look for her. But basically, I really feel like the 60s Scoop was the next step after residential school. So once the school started to close down, the government still felt that there was an Indian problem. And their solution was to take children out of the communities and put them into non-Indigenous homes. And they did this through many different types of programs. One was called AIM, Adopt an Indian or Métis program. So they put advertisements in newspapers. All the adoption agencies got stacks, pictures of Indigenous children, and that's all they were allowed to give out. So when I was chosen, it was through Jewish Family Services that received that large stack of photos, and when the families came, it's like, this is what we have. So I became one of those poster children. My sister Sonia was too old, so she wasn't considered adoptable. So even though Sonia and I were in the foster home together, because I was 3, I was still sort of cute, and they felt that, and my parents, they chose me right away. So what happened was, we went to bed, and then Sonia woke up and I was gone. She's like, what happened? Where'd she go? Did our mom come and pick her back up? Did she go to another family? So it really resonated with her, and she missed me so much, and she just wanted to connect with me, and just years and years and years of trying to find me. And then finally, when she was about 16 or something like that, she found out that we both have inheritance from John Murray, who adopted us both. Because my real name is Margaret Murray, and my sister is Sonia Murray, so John Murray adopted us both first and put money aside for us. So when it was discovered that my name was on the list too, she was like, okay, send letters, because I want my sister to remember me. And that's where she started, and eventually we finally met when we were about, I guess I was about 24, and we've been close ever since. It's like that movie, The Color Purple.
Yeah.
When those sisters are separated, I remember seeing that movie and being in pieces and not knowing why. And every time I see my sister and we separate, it's the same thing again, even though I know she's fine. But And then she did the same thing for Rosemary. She was like, we have another sister, right?
And she ended up in Austria, right?
Yes. Her father was German, and when they had a custody battle between him and our mother, he won, and he took Rosemary to Austria. See, my mother went to residential school, so she wasn't able to really bring up her children, and that's why all her children were placed into care. It wasn't so much that the government necessarily took it, she was not ready to look after us. She was not able to do it. So anyway, Sonia was really, really resilient in trying to find Rosemary, and it's super cool because Sonia and I don't really look that much alike, but Rosemary and I totally look alike, and I've never met anyone that kind of looks like me, and so it's kind of neat, and we stay in touch, all three of us, and hopefully maybe this summer we'll all meet, which would be awesome.
That sounds amazing, and I guess what sticks out to me here is that the incredible resilience, like that both your sisters have, and that you have, this thing happened when you were 3. I can't imagine how traumatic it is. Your sister was 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rosemary was 5.
Rosemary is actually 9 months younger than me.
Oh, sorry. I got
really
my
crazy, actually. We're
so
super close in age.
so this thing happens, and here you are today. You're one of the.
Like an advocate?
No, I mean you do amazing things, and that sounds really vague. What do you do with the Native Women's Shelter in Montreal?
Well, I just want to sort of fall back.
Sorry.
No,
It's fine. It's fine.
It's just that because of my experience when I grew up in this Jewish family, they weren't given the tools, the families. So they weren't told, how do you bring up a Native child in a Jewish surrounding? And social workers were like, don't tell them anything. Don't tell them their nation. Don't tell them where they come from. Just pretend they're like little Jews or little white children or whatever. Yeah. And what happened with the 60 scoop is that 85% of the adoptions failed. So everyone is running away from home. Nobody feels included in the family. The families aren't able to understand the generational trauma that we've gone through. Yeah. So there's a real big disconnect. And then you feel twice disconnected. One from your Indigenous family that is somewhere out there, and then one from your adopted family. So that experience, I ended up leaving home at 18 because it wasn't a fantastic experience. I just felt like I needed to be on my own. But it fueled me to do the work I'm doing today, because the kind of messages I was getting from my adopted family were that, Native people are the dregs of society, and that, you don't really want to be a Native person. And I always was so proud to be Native. And I'm like, what's happening with all those other children that I currently don't care?
Thousands of kids,
Today, what can I do? So when I started working at the Native Women's Shelter, and I started seeing that the numbers are increasing instead of decreasing. So we would notice that the women who themselves were in foster care now have children in foster care. And I was like, okay, well, I need to go to Youth Protection and explain this to them. I'm like, something is wrong in your system, that it is getting larger than smaller, and how can I help? And I've been working with Youth Protection for easily the last 10 years. So, the Native Women's Shelter, it's supposed to be a safe, supportive environment for Aboriginal women and their children. So that's what we do. We have all different types of services at the shelter. We have a clinical supervisor. We have a psychologist that's there 4 days a week. We have an art therapist. We have a holistic health worker. We have an outreach worker, an addictions worker, family care worker. 85% or something along that lines of women that come to their doors have addictions problems. So we're going to hire someone to work with someone to help with their addictions. Family care. Because all their kids are usually either signaled with BATSHA or already are in care. So we want to strengthen that relationship. We have a sweat lodge at the Botanical Gardens. So we try to think, how can we keep them safe at the shelter? But eventually they're going to have to leave. So how do we keep them safe when they go out? So that's why the shelter has other projects that are going on in the city.
I think your experience and what you do really speaks to a few things that are happening or that have happened. These really interesting trends in Canada. One, if the solution to what they would call the Indian problem is to take all these kids away from their parents and assimilate them, then as you yourself said, it's been a huge failure. 85% of those adoptions went terribly. So that didn't work. And now we have a situation where perhaps the majority of Canadians don't realize this, but more than 50% of Indigenous people in Canada live in cities. Mm-hmm. And these cities can be a terribly unwelcoming place for Indigenous people. Yep. When I spoke to the people who work with you at the shelter and others who do the kind of work that you do, I hear that landlords will refuse to rent to Indigenous people. I've heard that you go to the hospital and you're treated very poorly. There's an assumption that you're drunk or that you're somehow less human than the other people. And I guess, what are you seeing? Cities are the future for a lot of Indigenous people because that's where a lot of opportunity is. How do you hang on to who you are and past and traditions and language, but also take advantage of whatever is in the city that can make your life better?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, it's so in 20 words or less. If you could know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's sort of, what are your needs? Is it your needs is to know about your culture, or is it to survive? So I think in Montreal there's a lot of services specifically for Indigenous people, and at the shelter we kind of guide them along those ways about what do you need right now to actually, have a safe place to live, have some type of income, get a career of your choice. What is it that you want to do? And I think after that comes the culture part. And I think in Montreal that there's a lot of different organizations that are really more in touch with culture. The thing is that, in Quebec there's 11 nations.
Yeah.
The population that comes in here could be more than that. There could be the Ojibways or Sotos or, I'm Cree.
Cree from Western
exactly,
Canada.
And it's completely different than the Crees from James Bay, right? So I think that it's hard to kind of be sort of pan-Indian in a way. Yeah. But, what we do is there's a powwow that happens in Gunawage, there's one that happens in the city. Terrain Vu has like a Aboriginal film festival in the summertime. There are activities, and I think a lot of universities are now getting, like McGill has the Provost Task Force to make sure that the school is more indigenized. Now Concordia has it, so I think you're seeing the surge of like Aboriginal pride, and that everyone is trying to almost make people accountable.
Yeah.
They have the TRCs.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Recommendations. Did you read them? Read them. Because people are not reading them.
No.
And organizations are supposed to implement them. They're supposed to put it on your desk in the morning when you come in and be like, hey, why don't you take a look at this?
How can we make this a better place for everyone? How can we truly heal from this terrible thing that happened and that continues to happen?
Or even understand. A lot of people, like my kids who go to school don't really learn that much. And what they learn is not great. And
you kind of have to sit them down.
I've had to go and speak to the school. I've had to speak to the principal. I've had to speak to the teachers. There was one particular instance where they said, they made a teepee, which is like a triangle, and they said, this is a wigwam. And they did a wigwam and said, this is a teepee.
Yeah.
And I saw my kids' homework, and I was like, that's reversed.
You got it wrong. Yeah.
Why are you teaching an entire class something that is not true? And how is my child supposed to pass? Because I will teach him properly. So you are setting my child up to fail. Some places like in BC and Ontario, I think the schools are more progressive. And I did have a conversation with the schools, so we are getting on a better track.
Yeah.
But as an Indigenous person, it's like every day is a fight. Like, what are we gonna tackle today? Is it, going to the hospital and facing the racism, trying to teach my child the right way, getting into an altercation with the police?
Well, this is a good segue. You have been very active in trying to sensitize police to better deal with Indigenous people in the city. That's often a problem or a source of tension, is that the police don't realize some of the historical baggage that comes with being Indigenous. That there's a lot of prejudice. There's, whether or not it's voluntary, I certainly don't think that most cops get up in the morning and say, how can I be racist today? But some might, but I got to give credit where credit's due. I'm sure there are a lot of nice people there. You had helped essentially encourage the Montreal Police to create an Aboriginal liaison officer, and you had also helped institute sensitivity training for the Montreal Police. My understanding is that's no longer happening. The police have withdrawn from, they're no longer giving the officers sensitivity training. The reason?
The reason is because they're not happy with the content. And what was kind of difficult was that we spent a year and a half, and it wasn't just me, it was me and Vicky Baldo and Rachel Deutsch and a group of us that continually, Dr. Elizabeth Fast, who is, METI professor at Concordia, and Stefan Pushkash, who is Inuk. So we spent a year and a half developing different types of training and going back and forth with the police, explaining this is what we think would work, and then they're like, no, I'm not sure if it's going to work, and then we would try something else. So we really did 150% to create something that they said they would accept. And then when we put it in action, they're like, nah, it's not going to happen.
So basically so essentially you've been going back and forth with the police, and the police said this is too hard, or this is our officers aren't ready for this, or I mean
it's a really tough question. The thing is that we did have an opportunity to train 120 police officers. I think that
did some of them, you think, come away with a better understanding?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, absolutely. I think once you
did
go
it make
to this
them better
training,
police officers?
I think once they, we actually had 2 test groups, and those test groups said that yes, now when they see someone who's Indigenous, instead of looking at them as oh my God, this person's drunk, what do I do? They talk to them more as a human by saying,
yeah,
what community are you from?
Yeah.
And that just de-escalates, because you're like, what? Care about me? You're asking me? You actually want to know where I'm from? So we did get good feedback, and I think that it's impossible not to walk away with something. I think sometimes when we do exercises like the blanket exercise, which is such an effective exercise.
When the officer stands on a blanket and you
read passages from the Indian Act.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden your land starts disappearing and you start dying because of, smallpox or, the Indian Wars or residential school or, a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
So by the end of the exercise, they actually feel what it's like to kind of walk in our moccasins.
Yeah.
And even though there might have been 120 at the beginning, by the end of the exercise, there's maybe 30. So it gives them a real perspective, and we were very careful in making sure that the content was very close to, like, Quebec.
Yeah, regional specific, so
yes,
it doesn't feel like, this is a Western Canadian problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We did very specific. We spent so much time developing this, so it was a real letdown.
Yeah.
But we are in the process of trying to let the police know this is super important, and there is no time to waste. Because we also see that people are being racial profiled. There was something on Facebook about that Inuk woman that was being sort of, bombarded by some police officers on bikes. And I remember in the video she was like, I didn't do anything. And I believed her. Like, I felt it. I'm like, I'm sure you didn't do anything.
Well, I guess and maybe we can close on this, because I think it's something very hopeful. You helped create the Cabot Square Project. A lot of people go near the Children's Hospital where that used to be. They used to look at that as this terrible, scary place because there's homeless people in the park, but also possibly because of some of their own misconceptions about the Inuk or the Inuit that hang around there. And what you did, you go to the park today, and certainly, like, you go this summer, you'll see activities, you'll see stone carving, you'll see storytelling, and you'll see the Inuit in the park interacting with non-Indigenous people, and they haven't been kicked out, they haven't been pushed aside. The neighborhood is changing, there's condos going up, and there's still a sense that, like, this is everyone's park, and that is... I'll be honest, like, I'll break the objectivity thing. That's one of the most impressive things I've seen in the city in a long time. Can you tell me about what from that project makes you proud?
I think One is that we're helping the people that are in the park. So we have an outreach worker that's at the Vespasian, and he's there 5 days a week. And if you need anything...
That's David Crane?
David Crane.
He's a very nice man.
Yeah, he's Soto from Saskatchewan. And he is there to help with anything. He'll take you to the hospital, take you to the... if you need to find housing or whatever it is that you need, he's there.
You just need to talk.
And mostly to talk.
Yeah.
And we actually have a psychologist that's able to be around that area as well, so if you need a psychologist. So it's helping the people and helping to listen to them and to help them with their direction and to make them feel heard, which is super important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a societal thing because people that go around the area and have a preconceived notion of what Indigenous people are going to learn something in the summertime because they're going to have these amazing concerts. We're going to do something again for Aboriginal Day, which is June 21st. And we also are going to have Aboriginal Fridays. So each Friday we're going to have activities that show the beauty of our culture.
So a feast or a...
And we're going to do the soapstone. We're going to do the storytelling again. Inuit games. And what's nice is that a lot of the people that do the soapstone sculptures and are incredibly talented, people don't necessarily know that some of these people were on the streets.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation, it's learning about the culture, it's a win-win for everyone. And then people have a better understanding. So when they see them again at the park, they're not like, oh, look at that guy. They're like, hey, I know you.
I remember that guy.
Yes, and can you make me one? They actually make contracts with them, so they do more work later on. It's too bad you didn't ask me about the missing and murdered, though.
Oh, that's right. Well, look, I'll have you back on.
Okay.
I wanted to say thank you so much, and I want to say that I did mean what I say about the street fight. You're a fighter, and you're someone that I have a tremendous amount of admiration and respect for. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to go turn the camera off.
All right.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in.